Welcome back to A Guide to Surviving a Stroke and Brain Injury. Today, we have the pleasure of having Bill Gasiamis with us. Before I get started, I would like to thank you again. Bill and I had an earlier date about 3 weeks ago to do this, and I had technology problems up the wazoo. So he was gracious enough to reschedule with me, and today is our second attempt. Now, there's no guarantees, but here we go. So a little info on Bill. He became a stroke survivor in 2012 at the age of 37, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had 3 brain bleeds. I know that's hard to believe, but 3 brain bleeds in 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in November of 2014, Bill underwent surgery on his brain, and he had to learn how to re-walk again, and we'll get into that later. But he likes to share his incredible story of recovering as a stroke ambassador with others to raise awareness and help similar stroke survivors and their families. He didn't feel he was getting adequate aid in his recovery, so he started recoveryafterstroke.com. He does YouTube channel of the same name. He's an author and a podcast host of Recovery After Stroke. And I saw you do some motivational speaking as well.
Yeah, I do from time to time. I do some public speaking, yeah.
Okay. So my first question is, sorry, what were all your deficits after the strokes?
Okay. The first time that I knew there was something wrong was numbness on the left side. My entire left side was numb by the time I got to hospital. The second time after the second bleed, which was 6 weeks after the first bleed, there was memory problems. There was inability to make a sentence, to finish a sentence. I would lose track of where I was in a particular conversation. I couldn't remember my wife at one moment when I was in hospital. And I couldn't work. I couldn't do any of those types of things. Couldn't drive. I've always felt like I was a bit spaced out in kind of this different dimension, really strange sensation where I was not in or out of my body. And all those things kind of went away. They dissipated after time. But then after brain surgery, I was left with permanent left side deficits, weakness, numbness, altered sensation on my skin, colder on my left side. My balance is a little bit out. And if I get fatigued, my left side gets fatigued way quicker than my right side. And best way to describe it is if you know what it's like to be drunk after a few drinks. Well, my left
Every day.
my left side is like that. It's kind of like always 2 or 3 drinks in, and my right side hasn't even started.
Luckily for you, though, you don't sound drunk and look drunk at the same time, like I
Right.
do.
Okay.
So you lost the ability to walk. How is it? Did your body remember how to walk again, or was it like strenuous? You couldn't remember.
So what it was, I have proprioception issues. So the way that it was explained to me is that my body doesn't know where it exists in the world. So it doesn't know where in the world it is, and it doesn't get feedback from my environment correctly on my left side to tell the brain what to do. So because of the numbness, I can't feel my foot on the ground correctly. So it's not giving the right feedback compared to the right side. And what happens is my muscles overcompensate. They try to make certain that I stay upright, and they tense up. And then all of a sudden, every once in a while, they might just let go because they kind of forget. They kind of forget to hold me up, you know? So what was happening was I I couldn't walk because my leg didn't know that it was on the ground, and my brain wasn't getting the feedback that it was on the ground. So if I put pressure on my left leg, my knee would buckle, collapse, and then I would fall over. And with my left hand, it was a similar issue, but more in the coordination side. And with the coordination, I couldn't bring my left arm to my nose, for example, or to my mouth or to my head. And I couldn't pick things up. And what was happening was it has altered sensation. So when something is hot, it takes a little longer for it to register that it's hot, and that I need to be careful with that. And also, because of the muscle kind of tenseness or the spasticity, it's very difficult to hold something like a cup of coffee on my left-hand side. The hand can't stabilize itself, and then it's a little bit
So do you have tremors or just stability issues?
I don't have anything that you can see. It's stability issue. It's kind of the way the muscle works rather than the ability of the arm to do things. So the arm can do things, but it's not supported by the muscles in the correct way. And
your brain is saying do this and it's not registering.
yeah,
is that it?
Yeah, the arm's doing it, but it's not doing it the way it used to. It's not doing the way the right side used to do it. And same with the leg. So now, for example, because of the feedback that I get on my leg and the numbness that I have, running is really not that possible in a long kind of sustained way on a football field, for example, because of the different levels of the ground and the uncertainty of the pitch.
Right.
I might not have enough information as to how to bend the knee, and then I could end up falling over or buckle the knee or do something strange because it's not registering correctly the information that it needs to tell my brain as to how to adjust.
So is it a depth perception thing as well?
No, it's literally just a feedback loop. It's like somebody put a filter on the feedback and the feedback's coming through, but it's not saying this is a hard surface. It's just saying this is a surface.
You don't know how to adapt to that.
Yeah. And when you go to a soft surface like grass, it's just saying this is a surface. So it's not allowing me to respond to the difference in the surface as they've changed from concrete to grass.
Well, I still can't run. Not that I ran a lot before, but I could at least run to the bathroom if I had to. But I also have problems with depth perception. So stepping off a curb, I have no idea if it's 4 inches, 6 inches, if it's a ramp. I have no idea the incline of it all. You know what I mean? So that's, people don't think about that stuff, but that is really
Is the depth perception related to the eyes?
Yes, partly, and partly my balance. So I have vertigo all the time. I literally look drunk when I walk. But so it's like when I'm walking, when I first had the strokes, I had a problem with surfaces like my driveway changing into asphalt and asphalt changing into dirt and dirt into concrete. I could not register in my mind what to do. So I would literally just freeze and just stand there like a dummy because I literally did not know what to do. Even tile, I had no idea what that was like. If it was slick, if I need to be careful. I mean, it was just, I still have challenges with that, but I'm getting better because you have to do it in order to get used to it. It's like riding a bike. You have to keep getting back on and back on and back on. But yeah, it's it's a lot. So I also saw on your podcast, YouTube actually is where I watched you, that you feel that your gut is impacted by the stroke, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you believe your gut is related to the stroke?
Well, there's a bit of research being done, and don't quote me on which research it is or what it's called, but I've read this a number of times through the last sort of 10 or 12 years. There's a bit of research being done is like with strokes, are they actually beginning in the head or are they beginning somewhere else? So it's possible, the research sort of suggests that it's possible that the stroke in the head is a symptom. It's not,
Really?
yeah, it's not like where the stroke has occurred and it's also the cause and the symptom and everything. It's not happening there. There's a possibility that maybe for some strokes, it could be a symptom and the actual issue that you need to resolve is elsewhere. And usually what they're saying is where it needs to be resolved is the gut. Now, there is a massive amount of work being done on the gut as the second brain. So they talk about the gut as the second brain.
Hmm.
And what they've discovered is that the gut has neurons in it, like the brain has neurons. And it has about the same amount of neurons as a cat's brain, which suggests intelligence. And
Right.
they know for a fact that the gut and the head are in communication with each other through the vagus nerve. So there is a conversation happening up and down from the head to the gut and from the gut to the head, constantly in this loop where they communicate with each other. And that's how we go into this process of knowing when to eat. Because we do get a gut feeling, the gut is saying, "Oh, I'm hungry," but the head is what knows what to do about it. It's the head that makes us make a decision as to when to start cooking or what we're going to cook or what we're going to do. So there's a whole thing that happens. And what I found, which was common with other stroke survivors, was that as soon as I had my head issue, my gut went offline. So it became less able to pass to go to the toilet. And it became sluggish and it became kind of unsettled and it felt a bit weird. And when I thought it was just a coincidence and I thought it was just me, but when I've asked the question of people who follow my Instagram or my podcast, there are a number of people who do relate to that experience and say a similar thing. So with the gut being an intelligence, because there's a book by Michael Gershon called The Second Brain, and then there's tons of other books that relate to that. The gut is where neurotransmitters are made. It's where serotonin is made. It's where,
Really?
yeah. So it's
I did
used
not know
by the
that.
brain. Yeah, it's used by the brain, but it's actually created in the gut. And then if you have a gut that's not working optimally and your brain is requiring serotonin, it's very difficult for the brain to access that serotonin if the gut is not working properly and it's not able to make the neurotransmitters that the brain needs. So the lack of neurotransmitters in conditions that are lacking, say, serotonin, neurological conditions that are lacking serotonin, you have to actually resolve the issue in the gut so that there is a more availability of serotonin so that the brain can use it and do what it needs to do with it. Now, that's just one of the things that is created in the gut that the brain benefits from. And also, you want to make sure that when you're eating food, the food is not only supporting your gut and is easy to digest so that you require less energy to digest and therefore you have more energy for brain power, you also need good quality food, for example, so that the gut is healed, so that it's doing all the things that it needs to do easily and effortlessly and creating all the neurotransmitters so that your brain can uptake it, but also so that you can have more energy from the perspective of you've had a meal before and you've said to your family or whoever after like Thanksgiving or Christmas or another celebration and you go, "Oh man, I think I'm going to go and have a sleep because I'm in a food coma."
Yeah.
Okay, so that food coma is a thing that is caused by eating too much food or the wrong food. And when you have a neurological condition and you're already susceptible to fatigue because your brain is doing more work to just stay up to date, then food comas and all that kind of stuff are more dramatic. And I found that they were really dramatic for me. And I was crashing really heavily compared to any other time in my life.
Now, was this before the stroke or after?
After. So I'd have a normal food coma if I overate the wrong foods at a party or whatever. But then, having the same nutritional habits after stroke just used to put me out of action for hours, even a day. And I realized that I could improve the way that my brain worked by changing the food that I was eating and not eating, for example, not drinking sodas and not eating high carb foods like pasta and bread. And because being from a Greek background, all our all our food comes on bread. You know, you have to put everything on bread. Um, Sometimes you eat pasta and you had a red sauce, a beautiful red sauce, and you put the pasta with the red sauce on bread. So those foods
This is
used
all different from America.
so those things used to be okay, but they're not okay for me now. I can't cope. And there's a real big conversation as to why pasta, carbohydrates, white potatoes, white rice, why they should be avoided after somebody has a stroke.
Now, how did you find out the correlation though? Because I mean, that's not something that came first to my mind.
So for me,
Did somebody suggest it?
no, it was just I felt really bad for a really long time after the first couple
Mm.
of bleeds, and I didn't know, can I do anything to make myself feel better? And nobody was able to tell me what to do, especially back in 2012. There was no information. And I was on this medication called dexamethasone. It was to reduce inflammation in the brain. It's a steroid, and it's given to neurological patients a lot. And this dexamethasone was a terrible steroid. It saved my brain, but it created these ridiculous side effects. I couldn't sleep. I was hallucinating at one stage. I felt like ants were crawling over my skin,
Oh, that's horrible.
right?
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
it felt it was making me really hungry. So it was dropping my blood sugar, and then I had to keep eating. I was eating about 4,000 calories a day, which is double my intake. Because I wasn't sleeping, I was eating at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, like massive bowls of pasta. And this was happening for 2 or 3 weeks. And in um in that 2 or 3 weeks, I put on 8 kilos, which is about, I don't know, 16 pounds or 18 pounds or something like that, something ridiculous. Um, and then I thought, I better read the side effects of this medication. And I read them, and they were just out of this world. There was about 60 of them, and I was experiencing 20 of them.
Oh my gosh.
And I just remembered somewhere where I heard the reason for this medication is to decrease the inflammation in your brain. And I thought, okay, how can I decrease the inflammation in my brain without this medication? Because
Right.
if I stay on this for too long, it's going to be really bad.
Now, is this before the brain surgery or after?
Yeah, before. This is
Okay.
first 6 weeks.
No, before your first one, right? Your very first stroke.
After the first one and before the second one.
Oh man.
So I'm Googling, and I found something came up about decreasing inflammation in the brain. And it was a book by Dr. David Perlmutter. And the book was called Grain Brain. And I just bought it. I had no idea what it was going to teach me, but the book Grain Brain was basically what then opened the can of worms and the rabbit holes that I went down that were related to recovering your brain after a neurological issue. Now, David Perlmutter is a neurologist, and he dealt with a lot of people who had experienced dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, those types of conditions. And while all his patients were coming to him with issues neurological related, he wasn't able to support them in any way. The medication was always going to just keep people alive longer and decrease the
Right.
symptoms as long as possible. And he didn't like it as an outcome. So they did a lot of research and they found the Atkins diet was supporting people back in the 60s and 70s, I think in the 70s actually. And the Atkins diet was basically one of the first keto diets. But what Dr. Atkins, who wrote the book, couldn't do is he couldn't prove the way that we can prove now the long-term beneficial effects of a keto diet. He had what we'll call anecdotal evidence, evidence that suggested that this is helping people, because he would have a sick person, he would put them on the Atkins diet or the keto diet. They would get better. They would report all these amazing things. They would lose weight. Their brain would come alive. They didn't know why exactly. They didn't know the mechanism that was working. So his research was poo-pooed a lot by the other side of medicine. And as a result of that, it didn't really take hold. And it was just considered a fad diet to lose weight in the 80s and 90s is kind of how I heard of it. But then the more research these guys did, Dr. David Perlmutter and his team, they discovered that they're getting long-term benefits for his Alzheimer patients, his dementia patients, and they were able to, with medication, improve the outcomes of a lot of these people and give them a better long-term diagnosis, I suppose. And that was it for me. It was like, okay, I'm going to do exactly what his book says. So his book said, basically stop eating bread, white potatoes, pasta, and sugar. And I just did exactly what he said. And then I started to notice the benefits to my health. I lost weight. My brain switched on. Now, when I say switched on, it just didn't feel as fatigued as it did previously. Even though I had a blood clot in my head, I had neurological symptoms. I still hadn't had the surgery. So, you know, we didn't know exactly what was going to happen in the future. I thought, if I can support my brain and reduce inflammation in my brain, which is how Dr. Perlmutter described it as well, well, then that could be a good thing going forward without medication.
Right.
And that was the entire reason that this whole thing started. And then what would happen actually every once in a while is I would have a sweet biscuit, and I'd feel the buzz in my head.
Instantaneously?
Instantaneously, I could feel the sugar running through my veins into my body.
Gosh.
And then it was weird. And I thought, oh, this is strange. Maybe it's nothing. And then it would happen again, say a month later or 2 months later. And it would be like, whoa, my God, I'm feeling like I've just taken some drugs or something, you know, like that. And then I was just, okay, I know this stuff affects me in a certain way. And maybe it did before the brain injury.
You didn't notice it.
I didn't notice it. But now with the brain injury, I can't afford to be out of action because of brain fog and
Right.
fatigue for months or weeks or days or whatever. So I did the best I could. Yeah.
Now, is that just for brain bleeds, or is it also for blood clots?
Also for people who have had an injury from concussion, from blood clot strokes, from bleeds, from any type of neurological injury.
That's amazing, honestly. When you say you were spacey and foggy and all that, was it like a cognitive thing, or was it just like, could you think in your head but not say it?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say, for example, I knew this was a can, okay? In my head, I knew it was a can. I knew it was a Mountain Dew can. But when I speak, it came out chicken. And I know that's crazy, but And people like, what are you talking about? I'm like, chicken. I need a chicken. I want a chicken. So they bring me a piece of chicken. I'd be like, what are you guys doing? Why did you bring this? But I had no idea that I was saying that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that wasn't me. So me, it was just Spacey was like I would get distracted and couldn't complete a sentence, or I had an idea to start a conversation. I would start the conversation and then the idea would go away. Or my wife would ask me a question and I'd begin to answer the question and then I'd forget what the question was. So it was,
In mid-sentence, I did the same thing.
yeah,
Like, what? I was more like, um, so you're talking to me, and I would go, oh yeah, oh squirrel. You know what I mean? I'd be like, I had no attention
yeah,
whatsoever. It was like easily distracted. And it has to be so frustrating for like your wife, your kids, people that talk to us, because we really don't know we're doing it.
yeah,
But to them, they're like, well, they just don't care. They're not paying attention. It's like, no, I swear, I really want to, I am interested, but I can't do it.
yeah. There's a bit of that. There was a bit of that, but it's it kind of got better as my years after stroke recovered and things took time, things kind of improved. And sometimes if I'm having a bad day, if I've had a really tiring day, if I haven't slept well the night before,
Yeah.
then I do get a little bit flaky still.
I feel bad for your wife. And I don't mean that to disparage you, but I mean, I think we don't give enough credit to the caregivers because they have no idea what's going on. None.
None.
Is it real? Are they faking it? Are they taking advantage? Are they worse off than I think they are? I mean, that has to be very troubling for them to get it.
Yeah, I think that was some of our hardest times was trying to work out, is this normal? Is this stroke symptom? Is it normal? Is it, what's going on? Um,
Right.
and we had a lot of questions unanswered. So there was a lot of Googling. There was a lot of meetings with doctors. There was a lot of visits to the hospital that were unexpected because I would feel like strange neurological symptoms. And my wife has got no idea. She's not a doctor. She's not a nurse.
Right.
She's a regular person. And then she doesn't have a rule book. Nobody gave her, uh, these are the 20 things you need to know about stroke.
Right.
She just went home and she was told, here, take your husband and sort him out. She didn't know anything, right? So we we did a lot of stuff at let's go to the hospital again. What's this? Okay, how can we help you? Why are you here for? Well, my husband's had, some brain bleeds. He's feeling a bit weird, blah, blah, blah. Please do a scan. Just make sure it's not bleeding because he hasn't had it resolved yet,
Right.
etc. So, okay, well, all right, well, no worries. 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks later, we'd be back there. You were in 6 weeks ago. I was. Yep. Do you think you're having another bleed? Oh, I don't know. Probably not. But why risk it? I've already had 2. Okay, I know. We're all right. We'll give you another scan. Another scan. It's like that's the only way that we could feel comfortable and at ease was to continuously get things done and be proactive instead of die wondering.
Right. Well, the thing is, I don't know if you felt this way, but when I go in those situations, because I didn't have a neurologist, they didn't assign, I had 2 strokes and they didn't assign me a neurologist. So I finally went and got one after 3 years. But before then, I had no idea. Is this normal? Am I supposed to feel this way?
Mm,
Nothing. And they'd make me feel crazy,
yeah,
basically. Oh, you had a stroke, quit being a drama queen, just go home and those kind of things. That's what got me into researching and the YouTube channel and all that, because there are so many things that aren't told to us, that we need to know if it's normal. And one of the great things I like about having my YouTube channel, as well as you reaching out to all these stroke survivors, is every stroke is different, but we all have some commonality. Somebody has emotional problems and somebody has, and we can all relate.
Yeah.
And that made me feel less crazy than I already am. But I agree. So is that what happened to you? Did you finally just reach out to other stroke survivors?
I did that locally in my community, and at the Stroke Foundation here in Australia, I met a lot of stroke survivors because I volunteered there for a little while. And it was a relief to hear their stories that
Right.
they're going through something similar, or oh yeah, this is what it meant for me, and it was like, okay, like I get this now, like I'm all good. I understand that little thing, but then there's a million other things I need to understand and get.
Right.
So part of my curiosity, when I get curious about something, I never stop trying to learn about it. And of course, I had a very big motivation as to why I needed to learn about this stuff. I needed to get my head around it. And I also needed constantly talk about it. So my wife doesn't need to hear about it from me every
Right.
single day. So in order to avoid doing that to her, a friend of mine, for a joke, said to me, so what do you want to do with this thing that you're learning about stroke and healing the brain and all that? What are you going to do about that with that information? So I'd like to share it with people and tell them about it. He goes, okay, where do you want to do that? I said, I'd like to do that, in my neighborhood in Preston. And he's like, how many stroke survivors do you think you'll find there? I said, I don't know, 5, 4, 10, I don't know, no idea.
All right.
He goes, do you know there's this thing called the internet? Yeah. Like, yeah. And I said, yeah. He goes, and that goes all around the world, I go, yeah. He goes, why don't you just do something like that? It's like try and share it online, Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And then to me, that was like, okay. So I wonder if I could find stroke survivors on Instagram. And of course I did. And then I reached out to them and I said, hey, do you want to have a chat? Because I'd love to know about your story so I could understand and learn from it. They said yes. And then since we were chatting, I said, can we record it? And then they said yes. And I said, oh, well, I'm going to put it on the podcast or on YouTube and that. And that's how it started.
That was the birth of that.
Yeah. And that was my therapy. That was me talking about it more often than I was able to. And that was me connecting with another stroke survivor. And that was me feeling better. And that was them feeling better. And then we put it out there and people started telling me that they loved the interview. And that's it. I was hooked after that.
It is. It's like a drug, because I think for me, just feeling not alone. Because, some of my family members left, most of my friends left. I was all by myself and then dealing with this stroke symptoms. And I couldn't talk. I couldn't walk. I mean, I was having all these things. And so for a while I struggled, because I'm like, well, nobody can understand me. Nobody can, watch me walk. I was embarrassed. And I think you had a young man on your channel. He had aphasia really bad. He was like 17 or something. Do you remember him?
Jack.
Yes. So that was me. That's how I couldn't talk. And so I thought, if somebody saw me then and somebody sees me now, it gives people hope. Because I had a lot of doctors tell me, well, you are what you are at 6 months, so welcome to your life. Adjust to your new life. And I'm like, excuse my friends, but F you. I'm not gonna take this. I'm gonna show you all wrong and watch me. And so I started recording it for me and for other people, not to like pat myself on the back, but somebody to inspire somebody else, give hope, because there is hope for everybody, you
Yeah, and
know?
pat yourself on the back. You know, who cares? Like, nobody else is doing it. We may as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
I know
I
it's
mean, I
hard.
still have a long way to go, but
Yeah,
I'm
but that's
better.
all
I'm
right.
much better than what they thought.
Yeah, you celebrate the wins though. That's the thing, right? Because
Yeah,
there's a lot of shit that we have to put up with. So
exactly.
whatever the wins are, we may as well celebrate those. And the thing about what I loved about Jack was he was all the way, I'll tell you back when December 28, 2020 is when I interviewed Jack. And episode 127, right? So I'm at episode nearly 300 now. So Jack contacted me. He's not embarrassed. He's not worried. He's not afraid. He's not whatever. He wanted to be on the podcast. He was so unwell, but he still wanted to be on the podcast. He can't hardly talk. And, originally when I was doing the podcast, I thought I'll reach out to people. And if people with aphasia would say, no, I don't want to be on the podcast.
It's
And I was like,
embarrassing.
and it's like, oh, okay. I don't know I didn't know exactly what aphasia was like. So I had an idea that they should be on the podcast. Like, why wouldn't they? I found it really strange. But when I met more people with aphasia, I understood what their difficulty was. And
Yeah,
they thought that what I was looking for was somebody who was perfect to talk.
right,
And I'm not into that. I don't have a perfect podcast show where it's produced and it's high. I have conversations with people. I don't care whether they can talk. I don't care how long it takes, but I want to show stroke in all of its versions, like not just my version, because my version is not like everyone else's version. So I got
right.
Jack. So Jack reached out to me. He came on after 3 years after he had a stroke. And then his mum contacted me a little while later and said, thank you so much for having him on the podcast. It really meant a lot to him. And it boosted his confidence and
Yeah,
and it maybe took his ability to step out in public and to speak with aphasia. Maybe it took it to the next level for him. And I
right,
thought, and I thought, well, there you go. That's exactly what the podcast is about. And then since then, I've had lots of people with aphasia join me on the podcast, and they're in different stages. And one gentleman, Duncan Campling, he doesn't specifically have aphasia, but because he was because he had a brainstem stroke and he was locked in, he had a tracheostomy for a very long time, and his voice is very shallow. It's not very strong, and he may also have I think it's dysphagia, muscle issues
yeah.
in his throat, and he spoke with a computer. So
Like Stephen Hawking.
yeah, kind of like that. Like we planned it. I sent him the questions, and he answered the questions. And then when I asked him the question on the podcast, he'd press play and he'd answer my question.
That is amazing.
That was so
That is
cool.
amazing.
How cool is that,
I
right?
wish I
So
would have thought of that.
I think he had a iPad program or something like that. And then, so how cool is that? So he can have the conversation, he can attend the podcast, he can be part of the community. It's slower, it takes longer, but it's still as effective. And yeah, that's like, how good is that you can give a voice to somebody like that? Jack and Duncan, they wouldn't have had a voice if it wasn't for
Right.
technology, this thing that we are doing.
Well, I was so proud and like I was proud of him, which is kind of, I don't even know him, but I was
Yeah.
so proud that he was so brave. And I can understand him because I remember talking like that. There were certain times I couldn't understand him, but I mean, he was so good. And what he proved was he's still here.
Mm-hmm.
He is still up here and he knew what he was trying to convey. It's just the stupid things that he couldn't convey it with.
Mhm.
And I was so proud. And you too, the patience. I mean, that's what a lot of people, when I had aphasia worse, people would try to interrupt me and finish my sentences because they got tired of waiting. Well, that doesn't help me. I need to work it out. Because my tongue, half of it was paralyzed, half my esophagus was paralyzed. You can still see my face right here is still sloop. And I mean, it took me, I had to practice. And what better way than for you to shut the hell up and let me talk? But I did a lot. I got a dog, so.
Yeah, the thing about people like me, uh, like people like I was before stroke is you've got no idea how to behave around a stroke survivor,
Right.
and you behave
Has
like
to
an
be
idiot.
very uncomfortable.
Yeah, you behave like an idiot because you don't know what to do or say. And it's normal, but it's so challenging to be a stroke survivor and have somebody while you're just about to forget your sentence
Right.
do this to you. Go, hurry up, like get it out.
Exactly. Oh, you're trying to say this. No, no, I wasn't, but thank you. Now I
Yeah,
forgot what I was going to say. And that happened to me so many times. It was so frustrating.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
other thing, too. So, what do you want to tell people what not to say to a stroke survivor or what not to act like?
You
Have
know,
you ever thought about that?
I have. You know what would be good if you are somebody who's listening to this and you're somebody who hasn't had a stroke, thankfully, and you know somebody who has had a stroke, and you don't know what to do or say. Don't do or say anything. Just be there.
Right.
Just say hello. I love you. You're my friend. What can I do for you? Just shut the fuck up.
Right. I did a whole session on that on my channel because not to berate people, but it was like, I'm not deaf.
Hmm.
So you don't have to raise your voice to me because I can totally hear you fine. Just because I can't talk doesn't mean I can't hear. And the other thing, most condescending thing you could have done to me, I had nurses do this to me all the time, was talk to me like I'm a baby. Oh, do you want it? Okay, well, let me get that for you, dear. Oh, you're such a good girl for doing that. Good job. I mean, I was 46. I'm not a kid. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the thing,
but
right? They don't know because they've never been in that situation. So you got to give them a little bit of slack, but at the same time, it's okay for us to say you're being an idiot. And I remember
yeah,
one of the best interviews that I had was um, a lady, Clodagh Clodagh Dunlop, right? And Clodagh had locked-in syndrome as well, and she had um, not able to speak for many months because she was uh, also had trouble with her throat, tracheostomy, and all that kind of stuff. Clodagh I interviewed back in episode 38, and she's come out of the stroke situation and couldn't move a single part of her body, not her arms, not her legs, nothing, just her eyes. And immediately with her partner, I think it was a partner or a husband, they set up a system to communicate. One blink was yes, two was no, and three was you're a moron. So they set the system up between themselves, and then
it's
the
funny.
doctor would come in, and say something stupid, and Clodagh would blink 3 times. and
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
and between the two of them, the doctor didn't know, but between the two of them, they knew that Clodagh had just called the doctor a moron. Uh, so even in her hardest times, she also felt that difficulty of
Yeah,
the inability for the doctors and the nurses to comprehend her state that she was in, completely all there, no issues. She felt cold, heat, itchy, all that kind of stuff, but she just couldn't tell anyone, I'm feeling itchy on my foot, or I'm feeling cold, put a blanket on me, or I'm feeling hot, take the blanket off. And she just had to deal with it. And that's,
Is she better now?
she's better now. And like she was a police officer in Ireland, and she's gone back to work. She's a detective now.
She's gone back to work. That's amazing.
Yeah, she has left deficits on one side. She has spasticity. She has foot drop. But, it took her a long time. But I interviewed her. Man, I interviewed in 2019 and her stroke was in 2015. So she went back to work. Maybe it took, 7 or 8 years or something like that. But
That's amazing.
she's definitely back to work as a police officer and a
Because
detective.
my Uncle Phil, he had a stroke. I don't even know. I was little. And he had locked-in syndrome. And my aunt, I love her. Just let me say that. I love her to death. Loved her. But she had him in the living room. And so there's like 20 of us kids because we're all cousins running around, all the aunts and uncles. And he would just sit there and he would communicate the same way. He'd blink once for yes and twice for no, but he would cry. And that would kill me because I knew he was in there, but he couldn't interact at all. And he could see everybody running around and having a good time. And he lasted 7 years like that before she finally pulled the plug on him because that had to be your own personal hell.
Yeah.
So when I had my stroke, that was my biggest fear because I remembered him. And I was like, oh my God. And I could hear myself talk, but it was in my head, not out. And so I was like, oh, I got Uncle Phil. I'm like, Uncle Phil, this is horrible. I'm going to die. I mean, there were so many things. So I admire that she's better because that's amazing.
Yeah. Now, a lot of luck goes her way. She's got to go through a heap of terrible things and she's got to struggle for a long, long time. But a lot of things go her way. One of the things that goes her way is that her recovery continues and continues and continues. And she pushes herself and she goes after it. And she's got the right mindset and she's got, say, the right partner or whomever. And then from all of the challenges that she's faced, she's focusing on the results and she writes a book about it. And, she does all this stuff and it's not not everyone is able to do that. So I think it's our responsibility. If we have the smallest glimmer of hope, for 1% recovery, it's to bloody go after it and turn it into
Right.
1%. And I think we have to do it for people like your Uncle Phil because that's what they would want, to have that opportunity. And if they can't get it, well, then that's their luck is their luck, and then they have to just deal with it. What can you do? You can't do anything about it.
Plus, too, I think times were different back then. I mean, there have been so many advances and so much information now.
Correct.
Back then, it was like probably a death sentence.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. He's always going to be this way. Like the doctors. I mean, not one doctor, this eye was all the way over here. I was in a wheelchair. I was paralyzed on my right side. And they said, well, how you're going to be at 6 months is how you're going to be for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And if I would have listened to that, like a lot of people do, then I would have never tried. I mean, I broke so many plates, but I have it in my head, no, I'm going to be able to do this one day. And if other people are encouraged by that, they'll try it. I mean, I think it's just the same that like the negative connotations that doctors, and not all doctors, because if you watch my channel, I have a whole bunch of inspirational speech therapists and neurodiaphons and other people on my channel, but you have to search them out. You can't expect them to come to you.
Just the moron doctors.
Yeah. That's
because
not the name I called them, but
yeah, but we wouldn't be here without them, and they all deserve a little bit of respect and our good graces, and that's fair enough. But there's a lot of work to do. They've got a lot of work to do. I can't believe that I still hear that story in 2024 where somebody was in hospital and doctor said, "Oh, you'll never walk again." Like,
right,
how do you know? You've got no idea. You can't say that to somebody and then walk away and go about the rest of your day like you did something good. You didn't do.
right.
There's nothing good about telling somebody they're never going to do something again. You should avoid being so definite in your comment. You should encourage them to go after recovery, even though it looks like they may never walk again. You should encourage them.
And plus, too, if I got this was my mindset, if I got 5% better than what I was, I'm doing good.
Yeah.
And I had realistic goals, and they changed throughout the years as I got better and saw my results. But I mean, there was no way I was going to settle because I want everybody to know you're worth it. You're worth it to try. You're worth it to give it a go. And it doesn't mean like 2 weeks, oh, nothing changed. I'm over it. No, I'm 7 years out and I'm still doing my exercise. I'm still, trying to talk well, which I'm doing pretty good. I think you can understand me better now.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is a possibility. And just because you don't have any deficits on the outside, I want people to know you still have things going on inside your head. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people see me and have only recognized my physical deficits. They don't know my emotional. My emotional center was messed up for like probably 6 months after my stroke, and I was angry and I cried and I laughed at absolutely everything. And I mean, people thought I was nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but look at me now. I have my anger under control. I have my laughing under control. I laugh at the right things I'm supposed to laugh at. The only thing I can't control now is crying, but that's okay, I guess. But
Yeah, that happens to me too every once in a while, right at the wrong. And there's no such thing as a right or wrong time. Like, just like cry. That's it. Bad luck. You don't like it, get the hell out of the room. I don't care.
exactly.
I'm not upset. I'm not happy. I'm not mad. I'm not
Right.
sad. I'm just crying. And you have to deal with that. I don't have to deal with that. If you're uncomfortable because there's a grown man crying, that's
Well, that's the problem. It has to be
that's your
harder
issue.
for men because of the stigma that real men don't cry. Well, that's a bunch of hooey.
Yeah.
But also, I don't want you crying at AT&T commercials either. You know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
mean, real men cry, and it's
Well,
okay.
I used to cry at commercials and TV and all that kind of stuff. It's like my wife would go, "What are you crying about now?" "I don't know. I'm just crying," and she would tease me about it n- in a joking, loving way. She would tease me about it. Bill's going to cry again. Or, "Oh my God, you're going to cry." And she would sometimes make it worse because I'm trying not to cry, and she would tease me,
Right.
and then I'd start crying, and I'd say, "You bitch! Like, stop it, leave me alone." But we've kind of come to that point where we just accept it as just a. It's like a. It's like a. It's no different now to a grumpy face or you know or I don't know, a silly comment. Like, it's just part of everything that happens in daily life, and your and the people that are around me, uh, who are uncomfortable, kind of have seen it often enough now, so that they're not uncomfortable.
Right.
They know it's not a this guy's devastated cry. They know it's not a severe emotional negative crying.
Right.
They know it's just a thing that happens to him, and it's not a big deal. But yeah,
Plus, too, I wish people would understand though that we're human, and I have pity party days,
yeah,
and I let myself have party days, except I can't camp there. So the next day I better get off on my ass, and it's over, and I'm done. But I have pity party days. some days, I don't know if you experience it, but are worse for me. I can't talk, I can't walk, my balance is way off, I can't grip anything. I have intentional tremors. So if I try to do something, I haven't eaten with this hand in 7 years. I was right-handed, haven't wrote. I mean, those things sometimes bother me. But the next day I get off my ass and I go, okay, well, back to holding my hand and trying to do it. So while we're on that, do you believe that stroke survivors should get mental therapy as well as all the other therapies out there?
Yeah, well, you can't recover from stroke just by going to physical therapy. That's not going to happen. Yeah, you need to combine your therapy with mental therapy and emotional therapy, and they're very different things. Mental
They
therapy
are.
is how you think. It's what you do with your thoughts and the way you go about thinking about whether you're in a problem or you're looking for a solution, whether you're focusing on the issues or focusing on the results. So it's like, how do you mentally apply your brain to help you with your recovery? And then the emotional stuff is pretty pretty clear. Everyone knows what that's about, right? Emotional recovery is about how you feel about things, um, how you feel about your new body, how you feel about the future, how you feel about the past, um, how you feel about your relationships, how they impact you positively, negatively. So you have to do a lot of emotional work. And people go to psychological counseling and they might focus on just sometimes you go to a psychological counselor and they focus on just all the stuff that's terrible. You go there, you leave feeling worse, and oh, these are all my problems and all that kind of stuff. You have to come to stroke with a solutions focus. And so I've got all these problems. This is the list. Which one can I solve first? And then you pick the easiest one and you solve that one first, so you could get a win on the board, and then you pick the next one and the next one, and then slowly as you go towards the top of the hardest ones, you've resolved a lot of those little issues that are bugging you, that are niggling at you, and they're no longer in the way, and you have more energy to solve the bigger problems. And you can't do solutions to problems when you're just focusing on your physical recovery. You can't just
Right.
think, I can't walk properly, so I'm going to put all my effort into walking and not think about how not being able to walk is affecting you emotionally. And then how not being able to walk is affecting you mentally. You have to be able to go, I'm going to do physical therapy and I'm going to try and work out how that's bothering me emotionally and how I can apply my mental state to solving the I can't walk problem. And then only then do you have this complete approach to recovery, because I've spoken to stroke survivors who will tell me that 10 years down the track, they avoided the emotional recovery. And that has
Yeah.
prolonged their stroke, their difficulties, and their challenges that stroke causes. So, in order, and at some point, they had an aha moment and they realized, oh, yeah, I think I've got to go back and deal with that stuff now.
The only thing because I tried to find, I only tried twice, but the two that I did find, they were more interested in my childhood. And, it's not about that. I'm fucked up now.
But,
You know what I mean? I'm like, you need to deal with me where I'm at, not where I
but,
was, where
but,
I'm at.
I'm going to say, but
Okay.
a lot of the things that when I coach stroke survivors to get through their stroke, they think that I'm working with them to overcome stroke. It's not true. I'm always helping them overcome shit from the past that's getting in the way of their stroke recovery. And it's the things that we haven't dealt with from the past that make us behave a certain way that gets in the way of our recovery. And when
Hmm.
the problem is that your particular counselor may have not realized that for that session, you actually needed to talk about today. And when you're in that session and you want to talk about today, that's what you talk about. At some point, the conversation has to be steered to, if you're feeling a certain way today, have you ever felt a certain way like that in the
Right.
past? And if you have, what was behind that? Why do you think that thing in the past made you feel that way? And then, is that appropriate for you to be feeling that way in the future or in the present? Can we deal with that in the past so that you don't have to feel it in the future or in the present? And that's the thing, like when you go, it's like when the nurse tells you, I think you mean this. And you go, no, that's not what I mean.
Right.
Let me finish. And you're in session with the therapist, and your therapist goes, I think we need to talk about your past. And you're going, no, we need to talk about
Right.
now. Because I want to vent. I'm angry. I need to get it off my chest.
Exactly.
Right. And then when I've done that,
Yes.
when I've got it off my chest
Then
and
we can work out the other shit. Right.
yeah, yeah. So it is a combination of things that they need to talk about, but they need to be very skilled at allowing you to be for today's session to be just one that you're not solving any problems, you're just laying down, I suppose, all the challenges. You're just saying, here they all are, bloody, this is how many there are. And that's it. That's all today is. And at least by allowing you to do that, what you're doing with your head is you're going, maybe I've put all my problems in an order and now I know what they look
Right.
like. I've for the first time grasped them and I know what they are. And then it's like, okay, let's pick the next one and let's break it down. But they're interrupting your flow in a session and trying to divert it
They
away.
don't care. That's how I felt. They don't care.
Perhaps, yeah. Perhaps
Because
there's one
I want to
therapist.
talk about one day I was 46, a single mom, going to work. Everything was per normal as it was. And then the next day, life over. Total different person, different life, different situation.
Yeah.
The second thing I want to talk about is my son. He was 17 this time, and he left. And I have not spoken to him since then. And so I wanted to talk about that. Explain to me why you think that is. How can you help me understand what he's going through? And I mean, over the years, I have come to do that. But I mean, I need to help then. I was so depressed, I didn't want to do anything, and that's what I needed to deal with that time. So I said, well, forget it. I'm going to try another one, which is the same thing. Well, you have abandonment issues. No, my son really left me so that it is kind of abandonment. I mean, it was just, I don't know, I just didn't feel like they cared what happened to me. They just wanted my money, is what I felt like.
Yeah, you might have found the wrong one. And that's our responsibility is to keep looking for the right one. That's what
Yeah.
it is, and that's what I do. I don't take shit from any medical professional. If I don't like what they've got to say to me, if I don't feel like they're part of my team, they're off the team. They're out, and I'm looking for somebody else. I left one hospital, and I found a new surgeon at a different hospital to actually do my brain surgery because the doctors were talking about me. They weren't involving me in the conversation.
Right. Not to you, at you, or about you.
Yeah,
I found that too. That was frustrating.
yeah. So I think it's good that you try and you try again. And that's right. You're not going to you want to talk about your son not being around, and you're not going for a diagnosis. You don't want to know what the hell's wrong with you. You want to go there and you want to go like, this is how this situation is making me feel. Now, if she or he helps you deal with how you feel about that, and let's say you can put those feelings to rest and they go away, then that might shift your mood and your mentality,
Right.
and you might be able to reach out to your son in a new way that you never have before. And then he might say, she seems different. Maybe I will,
Right.
maybe I will chat to her, because you're not going to him emotional anymore. What you're doing is you're going to him level-headed, clear of emotions,
Right.
and you're just going to go, why he's my son, I'm going to reach out to him. Their job is to get you to that point where you've dealt with the negative feelings and you've changed your mindset so that you can try again. And then if that fails, and then you have negative feelings and a negative mindset again, it's again to help you deal with the negative feelings so that
Right.
you can put them to rest, help you shift your mindset, look back at it in another way and go, okay, let's go forward again. Let's have another try and keep trying and keep trying.
Because
And
I
then,
was very irrational. I was all over the place. I'm like, oh, everybody's leaving me. Look at me now. I can't do anything. I mean, I was in the lowest of my lows, and I was just hoping for somebody to be rational and say, okay, I'm a very methodical person. So, okay, you feel this way today. So tomorrow you're gonna brush your hair. You know what I mean? And then think about why you don't brush your hair. Does that make sense? I mean,
yeah,
like, I needed somebody to like give me a guide to function
yeah, yeah,
and be rational where I was very irrational.
yeah.
Very irrational.
Yeah. And look, maybe you weren't the right client for that particular counselor as well.
Well, I think my expectations might have been too high too, because I was looking for somebody that understood about strokes.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's many mental health professionals that I've encountered who have dealt with that before. Because I'm a big fan of, I have PTSD because my whole life changed. I mean, sounds freak me out still.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I wish people would try to zero in on and focus and, I don't know, give a shit.
Yeah. Hmm. I think I think it's fair and reasonable, especially when you've had a stroke and there's been all these changes and you're going through a tough time, to have some expectations of the people who are helping that, that they might be able to help. I think it's fair and reasonable. Um, but it's not uncommon what you're saying, that people get disappointed in the helpers, and that they feel like their helpers are not helping, and then they feel like they're not equipped to deal with stroke and all the stuff that goes with it. And in one way, I understand them, and in another way, I understand the counselors and the helpers, because they've never had a stroke, so they don't know.
Right.
Even though they think
Well,
they know, they don't
yeah.
know.
I probably thought the same way before I had my stroke.
Mm,
I was under the impression that only older people had strokes. I had no idea about younger people having strokes, which
yeah,
was my first, you know, but I don't know. It makes me sad that I just want somebody out there to care. Even if you don't have the answers, lend me your ear and let's go through this together. You know what I mean?
it's what we
And
said
I think
earlier.
that's why I like the community we're in,
Mm.
because people do care. People do listen, you know.
It's what you said, what we said earlier. It's like, if you don't know what to say, you don't need to say anything. Like, just
Exactly.
just be there.
I don't know what I thought therapy was supposed to be like, but it was not that. Because it was like they wanted to prescribe me the antidepressant medication. And I'm like,
Mm.
there's a difference between being sad and depressed. And I was sad. I mean, most of my family left. I lost all my friends.
Mm. Mm.
Uh, my whole physical. I mean, I should show you a picture of me. I look so differently, and everything changed. And I couldn't see. I couldn't talk. I mean, I just want somebody to listen, I guess,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
vent to.
yeah. And antidepressant medication in that particular situation might be like a sort of like a way to decrease the people's emotional response and to try and calm it a little bit. And then,
Now, I had anxiety medication, which helped,
yeah,
but it was different than this stuff. This stuff made me like not care about anything. I was a zombie.
yeah. And that's kind of part of it, is to interrupt the pattern that antidepressant medication is, interrupt that pattern that people are in. So that's kind of why they prescribe it a lot. The other part of antidepressant medication for somebody that is in your state, for example, after a stroke and goes through all those changes all at the same time, is it kind of gets in the way of helping you work out what your problems are and then solving them in a timely manner. And sometimes what I think antidepressant medication might do for somebody like you is delay the solutions to the problem and like put it down the road, because we're dulling all the emotions, we're dulling all of the the feelings, and then they just come back later. So
Right.
you're still going to have to deal with them. It's just when. And some people don't want to deal with it right now. There's too much on their plate. Some people might be more solutions focused and want to deal with it now, even though they're in a really bad way. So it's finding the right balance for you. And I feel like what you at least did was perhaps stumbled a couple of times, but found the right version of the recovery that was going to suit you, and you went for that, even though they were trying to guide you to meds or diagnose you with a condition or whatever. It's like, yeah, like my whole life's different, completely different. Of course, I'm going to have shit going wrong and problems and
Right.
all that stuff. So it's what you said, I need a guiding hand and somebody to lead me down the path.
Because it was very overwhelming, very overwhelming. As I'm sure I mean, I couldn't go to work anymore. My lifestyle is completely different than what it used to be.
Yeah.
Completely different. I couldn't drive. I couldn't, type. I couldn't text. I couldn't talk. I mean, my whole life was changed.
Yeah.
And so I was sad. I wasn't depressed because I still got up every morning. I still tried everything. I didn't, I don't know.
Yeah. They're very valid points. Everything you say is pretty valid. I think it's all stuff that I've considered at one time or another. And then as you get further out, at 7 years, I probably would have responded differently to what I'm responding now at 12 years.
Yeah.
So you have a very different, you develop your thoughts over the next few years, and you'll look back on it differently. But I think you're doing great, because you're still demonstrating how terrible things were and now how things have changed and shifted for the better regardless. You're being proactive. You've got your own channel and you're trying to put content out there and you're trying to meet people. You're doing all the things that I started doing way back when. And what that does is that pays off, that pays dividends, and you get results at some stage, whether they are changes in the way that you feel about yourself, or you met an amazing person, so you've opened your circle of people further, or for me, it's writing a book, it's going on other people's podcasts. I'm going to interview a gentleman's going to interview me, a guy called Nurse Keith, and I had no idea about the particular podcast that he does and who is involved with him, what community he's involved in. So he interviews nurses. It's more about providing information to nurses about different things. So now I'm going to be the first stroke survivor that goes on his podcast, and his
That's
podcast
amazing.
talks to nurses, right? So isn't that great that I'm going to get to actually do what we're saying? It took 12 years, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk to them so they have a different understanding of what it's like to deal with a stroke survivor. And then,
Well, and hopefully that'll lead to other people, other health care providers wanting to know,
yeah,
to have
correct,
knowledge
right?
about us. Yeah.
Correct, right? And then Keith is part of a network of podcasts that some guy in the UK, in the United Kingdom, operates, called the Health Network Podcast, the 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 Health Podcast Network, something like that. Now, I don't know who this guy is, but I didn't know there was a network of podcasts that some
Me
person
neither.
was promoting that were related to health. So, he's thinking he'll reach out to that person. So all the things that I've done to solve all those problems that I had at the very beginning, people not understanding, medical professionals not going about things the right way, all that's all now starting to come together where I'm
Right.
able to impact them in a positive way and address some of those issues that I had with them way back when. So you're
So
doing,
that kind of leads me to why the title of your book. Can you tell people what the what the name of it is?
yeah, it's a weird name, isn't it?
Yes.
The unexpected way that a stroke became the best thing that happened. So the first time I spoke about the book on my channel, my YouTube channel, um, somebody, the first response I got was, "This is ridiculous. How could you be promoting stroke as something for people to experience and all that kind of stuff?"
Which you're not.
And I'm like, you have missed the point completely. Just,
Right.
just read the title, The Unexpected Way. It was unexpected that stroke became the best thing that happened. I didn't see it coming, and clearly
Right.
it wasn't the best thing that happened at the beginning. It just became that. And I'm still living with all the deficits and the stuff that stroke has caused, but I have grown so much as a person. I've developed so much further and deeper than I ever would have if it wasn't for this stroke, that when I look back on it from a personal growth perspective, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, do I want people to have strokes? No. When
Obviously.
when they do have strokes, is it fun? No. Is it easy when people have strokes on family, friends? No. None of that stuff's good. All that's terrible. However, there's a silver lining, and the silver lining is that in the search for solutions to my problems, I did all the things that you and I spoke about. I reached out to people. I needed to connect with people. I needed to share information. I needed to learn information. I created a podcast. And as I created the podcast and started to have many of these conversations, after about 50 or 60 conversations, I realized how far I'd come. And I realized
Yeah.
I've met these people and what I've learned and what I've overcome and what I've grown and how I've helped those people overcome that
And
stuff.
what you learned.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What you learned, you can pass on to other people too.
To make their recovery easier.
Right.
And they passed stuff on to me to make my recovery easier. And I never had such a community before stroke. I didn't have such people who understood me so deeply, who were willing to meet a stranger on a podcast and have a conversation for over an hour. And we got along like a house on fire. It's like, oh my God, I didn't know people like this existed. My world entirely became a more amazing thing, right? And I said I didn't realize I was saying it. And I said to this particular person during the interview, I said, I think stroke's the best thing that happened to me. And then, and then I kind of like, oh my God, like, what did I just say? And, and that person said the same thing to me. And I was stunned. I didn't believe that another person could get to that stage, let alone me. So at around about that time when I had this idea, one of the people who I wrote about in the book is one of my teachers, a guy called Marvin Oka. He was running this particular course. It's called a behavioral modeling course. And what they do is they model behaviors of people that you want to replicate. For example, like a world champion athlete, maybe a diver. You want to model their system that they do internally in their body, how they think, how they talk to themselves, how they behave, how they train, how they dive, how they move off the board. You want to understand like what a gold medalist does, and then you want to tell that to somebody who's just coming up in the ranks, and you want to teach them this is what a gold medalist does. That's
Right.
different from what you do. So they model people's behavior and they teach other people. So my friend Marvin Oka was running this course, and he said, when you come to the course, it's a behavioral modeling course. You're going to have to learn the method that we're going to use to teach excellence to other people, but you have to have a project to do. You're not just going to come and learn this stuff. You have to actually start a project when you come to this course. And I went there not knowing whether it was possible, but they said to me, like, what's your project? And I thought, I think I want to do my project is going to be like, is it possible that other people think stroke's the best thing that happened to them? And if it is, how did they get there? And then I had about 4,000 followers on Instagram at that stage. And Marvin said, why don't you ask your Instagram followers if anyone else can say
That's
that,
amazing.
right? And
I would
man,
never think that.
yeah, I asked them and they all said, no, it's the worst thing, blah, blah, blah. And then there was about 12 people who said, yes, it's the best thing that happened to me. And that's it. We were on. And then I was like, okay, let me interview you and find out what we had in common. And that is what the book is about. So this is what they had in common. I'll briefly go through it.
Yeah, please.
So they had a stroke recovery mindset. Okay, so this was obvious. It came out in the interview, like really obvious that they had a mindset that was about solving problems and recovery, not pity party mindset. Most of the
Right.
time, they did recovery. Sometimes, like you and me, we did pity party, but pity party was a very short amount of time. Um, then remember we spoke about the gut brain.
Yeah.
They attended to their instinctive.
Wow, that's crazy.
They didn't use those words, but they attended to their gut, their identity, which, by the way, your identity resides in your gut instinct. They attended to um, listening to their gut. They attended to being guided by their gut. So they did that. Then they listen to this one. Then they attended to their emotional needs. Okay. And the heart, by the way, has neurons in it as well. So,
I did not know that either.
right, the heart has between 30,000 and 120,000 neurons. And it also is an intelligence because sometimes we use gut language and we use heart language when we say stuff like, I wear my heart on my sleeve. Or my heart was not in that. I wasn't going to do that. My heart's not in it. Or people say, I followed my gut.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, that's not the head. Clearly, we're not dealing with the head making those decisions. These other intelligence are. So they attended
Right.
to their emotional. Then they discovered and learnt about neuroplasticity and they started to implement neuroplasticity changes. And they understood that going to therapy, physical therapy, was rewiring the brain. They dealt with that. So in that chapter, neuroplasticity chapter, I also talk about the negative side of neuroplasticity, which is when you're thinking negative and being negative, and that's all you're doing, you're rewiring the brain in a negative way. So you're using neuroplasticity, but for evil. So then they also attended to their nutrition. They improved their nutrition. They stopped drinking something, or they started eating something, or they stopped smoking, or they started this, or they stopped that. Then they all attended to sleeping better. Sleeping better. So one of the things about sleeping better is that it's when your brain is actually being flushed of toxins in the middle of the night when you're sleeping. Part of the sleep cycle, it decreases the size of the brain cells. And as they decrease, cerebrospinal fluid can go through the brain much easier and it flushes out the day's toxins and it gets them out of your system.
Wow. I
Right. So,
didn't know that either.
right. So that's that. They, what else did they do? I said the nutrition, I said sleep. Um, they started following their heart's desires. This is a really cool one, right? So you might have felt this as well because I felt it and I didn't know what was happening at the beginning. It was like all of my decisions used to be head based. I need to work more, make
Yeah.
more money. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to buy this car. I need to buy this house. I need to do that. I need to do this. And then it started going, well, I don't really give a shit about making more money now. Like, I want to do something that I love, that I enjoy. What do I love, enjoy? I want to go on a trip, or I want to experience this, or I want to go to a show, or I want to see a ballet or whatever. And I started to do things that I enjoyed. So they started to attend to following their heart's desires and living heartfully. I call it living heartfully. Instead of mindfully, they started living heartfully. Then they started to help out other people, and they improved the community. So there's some people that left their community, some people that came into their community. They then reached out to other people to bring into their community, and their friendship group changed almost by itself, but also with a little bit of fine tuning by them. And they found new people that were going to support them in this journey. And then all of them said that they found their purpose, but they didn't start with purpose. They didn't start with, I'm going to go and find my
Wow.
life purpose. They did all these other things, and then their life purpose emerged. And it's what happened to me. My life purpose became, I think I'm going to do a podcast about stroke survivors for the rest of my life. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't know that that was going to be my purpose when I started the podcast. It was selfish. I started it to help me recover, to help me heal.
Right.
And then it became, oh my God, this is not just about me. This is about other people. And my purpose emerged, and they found that their purpose emerged. And it was always related to helping other people, supporting other people, teaching other people, like helping them grow, overcome. And it's like, wow. So when you go back to stroke and you think, all these things happened because I had 3 brain hemorrhages,
Right.
how could stroke not be the best thing that happened to me? It doesn't matter what their deficits were. It doesn't matter how bad they were, how good they were. It doesn't matter what they have to live with, whether they're working or not working. It doesn't matter what background they're from, what culture they grew up in. It doesn't matter what color their skin is. It doesn't matter what their religion is. All the people that I interviewed are completely different. All of them think that stroke was the best thing that happened to them. All of them had those 10 things in common. Weird title, but the truth.
Well, it's a good type because it definitely made me stop and go, huh? What? I mean, but I think when you put it that way and it's explained that way, I think more people need to realize we're never going to be those people we were pre-stroke. I'm a totally different person now. And to be honest, I like myself better now than I did back then.
There you go.
And I think that's one of the advantages of having a stroke is I didn't have a choice. I had to become this person. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. Now, is there any other thing?
I just want
I'm
to go
sorry?
back to one thing. Say you remained your old self. Could that old self recover from all the stuff that you were dealt with if you stayed the same?
I don't think she would have cared. I mean, let me rephrase that. She would have cared, but she would have went on, but in a different way. Like, okay, that happened to me. I was very tough, very victim-ish, I guess.
Yeah.
Like things happened to me, and now I'm like, yeah, that did happen, but I'm not going to be a victim because I figure how you react is half the process. And she was like, everything happens to me. Why me? Poor me.
Yeah.
Now I was like, well, that was me in the beginning. I'm going to be honest. But now it's like, no, forget all you guys. I'm going to show you
Yeah.
and watch me go. And who comes along with me? What a privilege to see me blossom into the person I'm becoming. And I don't mean to sound like, what do you call it, conceited or whatever.
No,
It's just, it's a
truth.
privilege to watch this process.
Yeah, it's the truth.
I know.
Yep.
I know. So, is there any other goals publicly or privately you would like to achieve for yourself?
So the podcast has, been a labor of love. I'd love it to become my full-time job. That's probably what I would like it to be so that I can do it more wholeheartedly than I'm doing it now, because now I'm doing it part-time, so to speak, or on my spare time. And then I'd love to be able to do public speaking about it regularly, share the story of how to turn the worst thing that happened to you into the best thing that happened to you. Uh, and then
But you're doing that, aren't you?
I am to an extent, but I'd love it to be my career, where it's not
Oh,
at the moment. Um, but that's about it. I don't really have any other major goals with it. I want to write another book. I think I know what that book is going to be about, but that's maybe a couple of years away.
was this your first book?
Yeah, this is again. This is another thing, like the best thing. I've never written a book. I didn't even know you could write a book. I wasn't. I was a
I don't know. I have the attention span to do a book.
Well, I didn't either, but it took 4 years. Like, yeah, it's hard for a stroke survivor to write a book. I didn't write a book when my brain was working.
Right.
So I think I want to write another book, speak to a few more people publicly, um, and just be the biggest podcast about stroke recovery in the world. Why not be that? I think they're my goals, because no matter what is happening out there with all the great things that people are doing, there's still not enough information. There's 1 in 4 people
No.
going to have a stroke in their lifetime, which means that I'm never going to be able to meet the need by myself. Other people are going to have to do that as well. So that's it. They're my goals.
Well, I think that's one thing that's great about doing what we do is we meet a bunch of people that feel the same way and they're doing amazing things that either are in public eye or they're not, but they're still doing amazing things. And every time I interview somebody or talk to somebody about this, I always learn something.
Yeah.
And that's the best part about what we do is we keep learning. There's always something to be learned and to be shared,
Yeah.
because you definitely have helped me today and I appreciate it. And I know my viewers are going, oh my God, this is amazing. So I really appreciate it. And again, I'm really sorry about the other day. And I thank you for being so gracious and patient with me.
Absolute pleasure. My pleasure. No trouble at all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I hope you continue healing 100%. And as I always say to my viewers, celebrate every victory, big or small, because that's really what it is about. So thank you again, Bill.
My pleasure.